This is the Mid-Morning Talk with Julia Lee.
Bismillah ar-Rahman and welcome to the program. It's a Wednesday. Nope, it's a Thursday morning. And that means you're tuned to the mid-morning live right here at Salam Media. We are all about humanitarian journalism. On the show today, lots of interesting things coming up. We'll be talking to Islamic Careline about how to be assertive in situations of conflict resolution. Dr. Noor from the Western Cape will be joining us to talk about his book. I think it is called, let's just get this right. I don't want to give it the wrong title. Let's get to that in a minute or two. Carol Surya, who is a counseling psychologist, a kids wellness expert. She's also an author and a game developer. We'll be talking to her about how do you talk to your kids about racism? What is racism? And how do you talk to them about protests? What do they mean? Why they are important, if at all? But first up, we'll be talking with Hassan Lorgart from, he's actually a social activist. I think back in the day, I seem to remember that he was with one of the educational, he comes from an educational background and very, very active in that space as well. I think it was Satu. I stand corrected. So all of that is coming to you live on the show this morning. Remember, we are coming through to you live on Facebook and also live podcast. This is the mid-morning show. Thank you for joining me. You'll be with me right up until 1 o'clock today. It is a Thursday morning, and of course that means it is time for the mid-morning show with me, Julie Ali. Let's bring on our first guest, Hassan Lorgart. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program, and great to have you on the show this morning. I've just been told that he needs 2 minutes more to get himself ready, so let's allow him that. And Shazi, you're sitting there in the control booth. Just tell me, what's the name of the book of our author? There we go. Document X, the direct evidence of God's existence. Alhamdulillah, Dr. Noor is a scholar of the Holy Quran. He's also a qualified pharmacist and a qualified medical doctor, but keenly interested in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus has done lots of studies, has written numerous papers, and has written this book, Document X. So we're going to unpack that a little later on, round about 12 o'clock, and we do hope you'll keep us company throughout all of that. Please do make contact with us via any one of our multimedia platforms. We'd be more than happy to hear from you. So at 7 after 11, do we have our first guest online? All right, let's go for an ad break and we will try and get him lined up, and then we can talk about something really important, close to all of our hearts, and it's the topic around, obviously, Black Lives Matter, and this has come on the trail of the very sad killing of George Floyd in the United States of America.
Morning Talk with Julia Lee.
Never before has humanity faced a pandemic like the COVID-19 virus.
The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak as a global pandemic.
Penny Appeal believes in prevention being the cure, and we remain firm in standing by our commitment to support and help those in need.
Because the border have closed, so I'm very, very affected. So
they are lacking in the supplies.
I hope government can find a solution.
Our response is to provide hardship grants to those experiencing a loss in income in the months to come, and hygiene kits for the vulnerable at home here in South Africa and Syria and Palestine. Show compassion in the midst of crisis. Donate to our coronavirus emergency appeal now. Be proactive. Be aware. Help save a life. Donate today. Call 031 11 00 573 or donate via www.pennyappeal.org.za. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
With over 80 years of experience, IG Hussein and Company are renowned for their quality Islamic wear and goods. IG Hussein and Company stock a variety of Islamic items, musallas, kitabs, Medina dates, perfumes and exclusive gifts. We guarantee you a unique and friendly shopping experience for the entire family. Visit our new branch in Overport at 202 Kenilworth Park, Brickfield Road. Open 7 days a week with ample parking and wheelchair friendly. Like us on Facebook or Instagram at IG Hussein for our latest promotions and updates. IG Hussein and Company, your Islamic lifestyle.
You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk with Julia Lee.
9 after 11. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program. This is Salam Media. We are coming through to you live on obviously Facebook and via podcast as well. Online, we have Brother Hassan Lorgart, and he is a social activist. Hassan, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program. Remind me, you've been involved for a long time with Satu, the same person. Am I right?
The same animal, yes.
Okay, so now you call yourself a social activist. Are you not involved with Satu any longer?
I left Satu many years ago. I was head of media and campaigning. And thereafter, I went to work with the NGO coalition. And currently, I work with mining communities. But my most enduring experience was in the unions. And while Satu was important for me, my treasure is that of an organizer, where I crafted my skill and passion for organizing those who are not as powerful as those who rule in corporations and in governments. Was in the Metal Workers Union. So NUMSA was very, very important for me during those years. You know, I've also worked in a municipal organization, and I worked at Public Services International. I was active in anti-corruption as well. But anyhow, I've crossed and learned from each of these various spheres. But none of them can be as tough as working with mining-affected communities.
Because?
These are people who don't have a stake in the system. They live in shacks around the mines. They live in maybe some homes. Some of them gave up their homes, their land for the greater good, you know, like so that we can use telephones, cell phones, and catalytic converters and all that. And they live in close proximity to the mines that pollute their lungs, and they die much younger than many of us. And their category, unlike teachers who, while they work in class, are quite close to influence. They know how to lobby governments, etc. These guys have no real voice. These people have no voice.
When you talk about miners, and we know that their lot in life is terribly miserable, elsewhere in the world, like the UK and the United States and other mining communities outside of Africa, possibly and outside of other third world countries, we know that they do exercise a huge amount of rights. They're very well taken care of. They are provided with housing, medical aid, medical care, call it what you like, schooling, excellent schooling for their children, etc., etc. How come we've lagged so far behind 20 odd years after democracy? And will the land restitution issue not address their plight at all?
I mean, South Africa, I guess in a way, is a country where we are very good at talking the good talk. So there are documents about restitutions. We have Chapter 9 institutions. We have IPID in terms of the police that we will touch on later. We have all that. But then we under-resource the regulatory bodies. Our laws are not implemented in the same way, partly because I think we were worried about the big compromises in our society, you know, making sure that there's no civil war, that people can live peacefully, even if they're hungry, not getting much water, and having the slow death, but at least we're not killing each other with machetes and guns and all that. Now, I guess,
however, Hassan, that is a threat looming on the horizon. I don't
Julie,
want
this is the
to
point.
sound alarmist. I don't want to sound alarmist, but if we don't start educating and feeding and providing reasonable medical care for the masses, that is going to be inevitable here in South Africa.
Julia, I was actually provoking you, so you're right. I mean, you can't tell a person, choose how you want to die. Or, your money or your life. We take away your good air. You guys, we don't see you because mines are 6 hours or so away from where we live, or 3.5 hours. So, you die the slower death, and or I kill you now. It's Hobson's choice. There's no real choice. But I do think, I don't want to go as far as others to diss the historic breakthrough that we made in 1994. What I lament is that since 94, the political parties, and I want to also today raise some criticism even of the opposition parties, not the white opposition, the black opposition parties. I know you wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
But this talks directly. This talks directly to Black Lives Matter.
Black lives do not matter only when you take the knee in the street there because someone got killed in a brutal way. And I think that when we enter this discussion more fully, I want to say to you that I target a number of people in my list. I've got a hit list this morning in our conversation. One is traditional media. Number two is government and the opposition parties. I think the DA and others are more right-wing than the government, and they put pressure on the government just to continue to do the things that, to go back to the past, okay? The police, who are supposed to be paid in terms of the public purse, but sometimes look like they're law unto their own, right? So I want to try and see how we can factor that in. And then finally, I want to take blame, you, Julie, myself, Hassan, other people, friends of ours, us as citizens, not being consistently vigilant in ensuring that our governments live up to the promises that they make to us in good moments. I mean, this morning we heard about Tsegofatso Pule. The lady was hanged and for gender violence. Gay human beings are killed in townships. That is not a white cop doing it, right? So my targets are there for our discussion. Traditional media fails us. It is a young girl, Daniela Fraser, who recorded the Chauvin, the policeman, Derek Chauvin, with his knee on Floyd. A young journalist, I think they say she was 17 or 19 years old, right? Not traditional media, right? Why is it that today we do not know who killed Colin Koza? We do not know. We know there were JMPD police there. We know there were some police SAPS people there and the army, but we don't know their names. And we also know that the army asked people to delete messages from their phones. Now, are we better or worse than Trump?
Okay. Before we get into that, which obviously talks directly to Black Lives Matter here in South Africa, and I think the narrative might be slightly different because we are in Africa and majority, obviously, demographically, we are talking about Black people. So what about the Black on Black violence, the Black police killing the Black civilians? We'll get to that in a matter, but because you touched briefly on the mining community, can you just, for the purposes of closure, maybe we're not even at that point yet, but the issue around Marikana, has that been done and dusted, or are there still a lot of unsettled business and unsettled answers as far as the Marikana issue is concerned?
As far as I can recall, the matter is not resolved because the hearts of people have not been fully healed. That we continue to explore force and violence as a remedy to resolve our issues means that Marikana lives every day. Whether we look at the 33 people plus the 10 others who were shot the day before, all of them are part of the human family. And I think it's wrong for us only to look at those that the police shot, that the others who died in this violence is clearly part of the conversation. It looks like we have not shaken off the colonial legacy, the apartheid legacy of how we do business and how we keep people in their place. So violence is the way you keep people in their place, and you keep them in their place also by paying them cheap peanut wages. I mean, for over 100 years, there was a maximum wage policy that they had in the mines, where wages of mine workers were pegged, right? Black workers had no union rights, but white workers had rights, you know? So this inequity that prevails from that time lives with us today under a democratic dispensation around the founder of the Mine Workers Union, Cyril Ramaphosa. One of the secretaries of him was Gwede Mantashe. So they need to know better to turn this matter around. And maybe they can say they need more time, but we don't regard them as a different administration. We regard the ANC as one, and they can do more, and so can the opposition do more.
Okay, Hassan, what I think is going to happen with this interview is that we're going to have part 2 next week at the same time, if you don't mind, because we have about 10 minutes left on this for today's interview, because we have other guests lined up. What I do also want to ask is, when we look at the issue around Black Lives Matter, is the scenario different in the United States as opposed to South Africa or the rest of Africa? And also we're seeing uprisings or protest action all around the Western world. We've hardly seen anything happening in our backyard or on our doorstep. Is it because we're suffering from protest exhaustion? Is it because we've been going on about this issue for years and years and years on end, that black lives do matter, that we're just really tired about this narrative?
Yeah, I mean, Julie, I try to compare what we are doing and what they're doing in America, and they look at us and say, hey, what Africans do. I was looking at one of the funeral groups. They were kind of going into a collective march, trying to get a bit of a toy feeling that we've had, right? And in the 1980s, the apartheid regime was so angry, they banned meetings, but then there were the funerals that were used as political funerals, where we could have moments to talk, to celebrate our heroes, to give life to people like Ahmed Timol and others, Asvat and the various comrades who died in bad ways, Biko, the works. Now, so we had that moment, and there's no fear amongst our people. The current deaths, where Julius Malema and others take a knee, march to Pretoria and others, I think it's good, but I think the government and the opposition parties must cease to operate like the NGOs or a small campaign group. They have influence and power, right, inside parliaments that makes the laws that fund the police, right? If Comrade Malema, one of the most articulate South Africans I've ever met, if he could, when he hears the IFED report that says to him, the last time they reported, there were 436 South Africans who died, overwhelmingly black. Now that it was not video cameraed how they died at the hands of the police, right? Should we be less angry? Why is it that we have to hashtag around Floyd? A man
okay, on that point then, let me ask you this question. Are you surprised? Are you encouraged? Or are you quite dismissive of the fact that in the Western world, we're having this uprising of protest, and we're seeing a lot of young white faces in the crowds. What's that saying to us
Encouraged.
as South Africans?
Encouraged.
And how sincere are they in their efforts as
Yeah.
far as speaking up about Black Lives Matter?
Julia, I think what happens in the States, Bernie Sanders needs to get a lot of credit. They build up a popular movement there of young progressive people of all colors, young whites who are very, very good there. In fact, I believe Bernie Sanders, I could endorse a guy like that, although I'm more left than him.
It's a pity. It's a pity he's fallen out of the race, eh?
No, but let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. That Bernie does not take money from corporations or big interest groups. He takes $20 from an ordinary waiter. Ordinary people control him. Where are those values that we had in our own movement, which was called workers' control? Why is it that every time the ANC, every time some union wants to have a bash, they must get funding from a corporation? He who pays the piper calls the tune. So I'm very encouraged.
Absolutely.
And I say it is the Bernie Sanders moment that brought that young people through, that has forced the issue of healthcare, universal healthcare on the American agenda. We do not have at this moment a similar movement. We had Treatment Action Campaign and others, but I think we need to rethink how we influence people now to get them out into the streets again.
What do you believe the scenario is going to be like once the dust settles? Obviously, in first world countries, on the whole issue around Black Lives Matter, it's going to have to stop at some point. People are going to have to resume their regular lives, so to speak. I'm kind of wondering what's going through these people's minds, these young people's minds. What are they expecting? What are the expected outcomes of these protests? And if nothing changes, what then?
You see, Julie, what's happening in the States? Trump is only thinking of one thing, November, for the elections.
Yes.
So he tries to change the subject every day to get people to discuss other things than the lives of people who are suffering and dying because of COVID-19. In fact, we were watching news stories on MSNBC. We flipped the channels to get a fuller view. Unfortunately, they don't allow us press TV here to get the full spectrum of news. But what he does, he wants to talk China, he wants to talk WHO. They're worried about the elections. And the fact that America's deaths are over 100,000 people who died because of COVID, and they were inept in how they handled it, is not a discussion. And mainly Black people, Asian people, Latinos are dying. Similarly in the UK, wealthier countries than us. So I really think that's the eye on the ball. And I think that many progressive activists in the States are thinking of staying the next few months out there to remind them, so that they cannot be manipulated by Facebook and such things to vote for the people who are really not in their best interests.
Let's just get back to the protesters, young Black and white people.
Yeah.
What is the outcome they're hoping for? Are they hoping there's going to be changes in legislation? Are they hoping that the way the police operate is going to be changed? Is there going to be a new set of rules as far as the way they break up disturbances or arrest, etc., etc.? What is that expected outcome looking like? Is it going to be enough to change the mindset of the current force, or are they going to push back against it?
I mean, I think that famous Imam, Reverend Shapton, was very, very eloquent about what they wanted. I think the moment now is for ordinary people to speak, to put the pressure on the politicians, right? And what they want to do is to keep the focus around the deaths. If you recall what was happening in the United States before these, Trump was encouraging white right-wing people to protest, to go to bars, to do things, because he was championing the economy. The economy will get him back into the White House. And I think what's happened, the visible presence of young Black people intergenerational black people, all those who've died, will keep the conversation going at least until there's implementation of the good ideas. In Minnesota, they had on the statute books that other police can intervene when an officer does wrong, right? They didn't use it. How many good things have we got in our statute books? How many good institutions have we got? And this is why I want to turn it back to our country. EFF and the government receive regular reports from the Human Rights Commission on xenophobic deaths of other Africans. They get regular reports about police involved in the killing of black people, right? And what do? We wait until the next crisis. And this is where my advice is to the EFF. When records started being kept for the Independent Police Directorate, right, the oversight body, in 1997-98, there were close to 1,500 people died. That is the first year they started keeping records. The last record was about 450. If you do it as a year-by-year breakdown, there's hardly a change. In fact, if anything, there may be underreporting. So I really say, Julie, what we need to do is to call the EFF, call government, call the Human Rights Commission to say, why are your reports, why don't you read the reports? It's fine to take the knee, but after you take the knee, stand up, go and keep the people accountable. If they did what they did to Zuma, to say, pay back the money, to say, we will not leave this place if another black person dies, there will be change. I don't understand the theory of change that the EFF is using, but they are very, very articulate at stealing the media. This is not just about the publicity stunt. It is not about publicity. If Black Lives Matter, it should matter that another person will not die, right? And that you have the power to keep those responsible for that ghastly act to be fired, jailed, etc. You are co-leaders. They are kingpins in many of these things. They have changed the discourse around land reform. And no good just to take the knee, unless you want to pray. But after praying, you must also organize, because they do not really, Allah does not accept you just to be saying, Allah, it's in our taqdeer. You have to work. You're a co-maker. They're giving you some energy. If everything is just there, that whatever happens, I'm useless, I have got no agency, then I really think that we should admit that maybe the good books are wrong.
Last comment. Obviously, we've seen all around, again, the Western world, that they are now busy demolishing colonialist statues, everything around these slave kings, that, they've got these commemorations and museums and statues all around, which young people, the protesters, have demolished some of them and demanding that they all be taken down. We saw that playing out here with the Fees Must Fall campaign. Do you think they'll be successful in the Western world? And how strong a message is that going to send to their governments? And will it make a difference at all? Does it matter whether you take those statues down or not?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it makes a difference. And you're probably seeing it now, Julie, but for some of us who've been following this beforehand, that the movement has been quite incremental. In Barcelona, where I have some family, the statues, I think, came down in 2017, December, if I recall, of a slave, a merchant, and they took it down. And the city was very, very progressive. The city spearheaded this move. So, but the pressure came from Black African activists and progressive people in Catalonia who said, we cannot be continue to be celebrating elites. But don't go too far. Let's go to Cape Town. You can see in our slave lodge, there were awards given to people who wanted to maintain slavery. There's a trophy there as you enter the slave lodge, to say he fought to maintain slavery. Why is it that the Afrikaners in Gauteng, hoekom is die boere hierso? They left there because slaves were freed in the Western Cape. So slavery has shaped us a lot more than we think, right? And it's slavery, the idea of keeping black people in their place in America, that gives rise to this idea where people can, a cop can talk to someone, oh, don't worry, you're white, we don't kill whites, we kill only blacks. Or, you know, this idea that black people need to serve others is the logic here 25 years after we've made dramatic changes, that we have to change socially. And the slaves were not only black African, they were also from India, Indonesia, you know. And that Creole that we have in culture that we have in the Western Cape has been created by slavery, and slavery forced them to move away because they now, you know, could not have cheap labor. Of course, they had to find new ways to get us indenture, wage slavery, and yeah, that's where we are today.
And that's where we leave it, Hassan. We have a date next week at the same time, inshallah, to pick
I
up
hope your husband is
and
hearing this,
talk
Julie.
about. He certainly is.
Thank you
We'll
very
talk
much.
next week. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on air again. I
My
don't know when
pleasure too.
last I've spoken with you. Keen mind, always nice to hear from people like yourself. Go well, and salaam alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam, and thank
11:34. Let's go for an ad. Get back. We'll be talking about how do you conscientize your children about the issue around racism and protest action. What does it mean? Help them make sense of all of this.